I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Lisa and I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, hit it off quickly, and everything seemed pretty straightforward, at least on the surface. She was a fiery, sharp-tongued woman, often bitchy but charming when she wanted to be. We had a good life, or so I thought. I ran an importing business, mainly art from Europe, Asia, anything that could fetch a good price. It was a legit operation, or so I believed. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Lisa had been acting a little strange lately, more secretive with her phone, disappearing into the bathroom for long stretches, brushing off questions with snarky comments. She'd always been good at lying, though. I'd catch her in little white lies, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed or had some work thing. That was until I found out the truth, and it hit me like a freight train. The first real clue was a weird email I stumbled across one night when I was checking my laptop after she'd gone to bed. I'd left it open on the desk, and there was this message from a guy named Rick. It wasn't just a casual exchange. It was flirtatious, borderline explicit, talking about meeting up, saving time, and how she'd make it worth his while. I froze. Lisa had always been a bitch about fidelity, quietly judgmental of other women who cheated, always saying she'd never do that, especially with some guy she barely knew. But here she was, clearly doing something shady. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was just some work-related thing, some joke, some misinterpretation. But the email had a follow-up, and I saw a pattern. She'd been texting him for weeks secretly late at night. The worst part, I saw a few receipts for dinners, hotel bookings, even a screenshot of a strange package arriving at our house. It looked like she was hiding something. I felt my stomach twist. Who was Rick, and why was she lying about everything? I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started digging. I pulled her phone records, checked her social media, and everything pointed to the same thing. She was cheating on me. I felt betrayed, angry, and confused all at once. How had I missed all of this? Was she just waiting for the perfect moment to drop the bomb? Or had I been blind to her lies all along? I spent nights tossing and turning, trying to piece together her web of deception. Then, the oddest thing happened. My business came into the picture. I run an art import company that deals with high-value pieces, and I'd recently been under investigation by customs because of some irregularities. It turns out there were some shady routes being used, routes I had no idea about, and I found evidence that Lisa was involved in the cover-ups. She'd been manipulating documents, helping someone move smuggled art under the guise of my legitimate imports. The files had her name all over them, and I realized she was not just cheating on me but actively involved in illegal activities that put my entire livelihood at stake. It was a shock to discover my wife was feeding into this illegal network, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. My mind was reeling. How could she betray me in such a way? I felt like I'd been hit in the gut. All the trust I had in her, in our life, seemed shattered. I was furious, but I also felt this deep sadness, like I'd been living a lie for years. I wanted to confront her, but I knew I had to prepare myself. There was no way I'd let her spin her web of lies and get away with it. I had to come up with a plan, something to make her face the consequences of her actions. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started strategizing, silently vowing to get to the bottom of this mess once and for all. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. My whole world was about to change, and I had no idea if I was ready for what was coming. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, and my stomach felt like it was twisted in knots. I kept replaying everything from the night before: Lisa's emails, her secret calls, the documents I found. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she have lied to me for so long? Not just about some stupid affair, but about something much darker, something that could ruin everything I'd worked for. I decided I needed proof. I couldn't just confront her based on suspicions and fragments of information. I needed to see everything, and I needed it to be irrefutable. So I started digging deeper into her recent activities. I installed a keylogger on her work laptop, something I knew wasn't exactly legal, but at this point I didn't care. I wanted to see what she was hiding. I also set up a hidden camera in our living room, aimed at the door where she kept her phone. I told myself I was just trying to catch her in the act, but honestly I was also trying to understand her mindset to see if I could catch her in a lie. The worst part was how her lies kept pouring out. She was a master at twisting truths, spinning stories, making herself out to be the victim. When I confronted her about the emails, she smirked and said, "Oh, that. Rick's just a client. You're paranoid. I'd never cheat on you, you know that." She lied so easily, like she'd practiced it in her sleep. Her voice was cold, dismissive, like I was just some fool who couldn't see what was obvious. But I wasn't fooled anymore. I could see the cracks in her facade. Over the next few days, I watched her every move. She'd leave the house early, come back late, and I caught her sometimes sneaking her phone into the bathroom with her. The evidence kept piling up. I found out she'd been meeting Rick in hotel rooms, and not just for sex. She'd been helping him with documents, helping him cover tracks, making sure certain smuggling routes stayed open, protected. It was shocking. My legitimate business was being used as a cover for her and Rick's illegal operation. They were profiting from this, probably splitting the proceeds, I thought bitterly. All this time, I thought I was running a legit business, only to realize it was just a front for their bullshit. I was sick with anger, but also with a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just let this go. Lisa was not just cheating. She was actively destroying my life and my reputation. If I was going to do something about it, I had to be smart. I started planning my next moves carefully. I reached out to a friend who was a lawyer, someone I trusted, and I told him everything, holding nothing back. I also contacted someone I knew from customs, someone who could tell me what was happening behind the scenes on the investigation. I wanted to see how deep this really went, how much she knew, how much she'd been involved. The more I uncovered, the more my stomach sank. Lisa had always been bitchy, sharp-tongued, and quick to dismiss anyone she didn't like. But this was a new level of betrayal. It wasn't just about sex or lying. It was about my entire life, my dreams, and my future being hijacked by her greed and her lies. I was starting to realize that her tendency to bullshit her way out of every situation was part of how she'd managed to keep her secrets so well. Until now. Now, I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of this. I knew confronting her would be the next step, but I needed to do it carefully. I wanted her to admit everything, to look me in the eye and betray herself fully. I didn't want a superficial fight. I wanted her to understand that I knew everything, that there was nowhere left for her to hide. I was preparing myself for a showdown, and honestly, I was terrified of what she might say or do when I finally called her out. But I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth. It was time to face her, no matter how much it hurt. The day I finally decided to confront her, everything felt like a ticking bomb. I'd gathered enough evidence, screenshots of the emails, detailed record of her hotel stays, the hidden camera footage capturing her sneaking into those rooms, and the financial documents linking her directly to Rick's illicit operations. It was all overwhelming, but I knew I had to do it face to face, no matter how much it hurt. Lisa was home when I arrived. She was sitting on the couch, flipping through her phone with that bitchy smirk, like she didn't have a care in the world. As soon as I walked in, her eyes flicked up and locked on mine. I felt a rush of nausea, but I kept my voice steady. I told her I knew everything. I laid out the evidence slowly, deliberately. I saw her reaction, initial shock quickly replaced by a sneer, then her usual anger bubbling up. "You're crazy," she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. "All this bullshit about emails and hotel receipts. You're paranoid as usual. Rick's just a friend and you're just jealous like always." She tried to brush it off, to spin her lies, but I pressed on. I told her I had her phone records, her recent texts, the documents she'd been helping forge, everything. Her face twisted into something bitter, like she was trying to think of her next lie, her next way out. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her, of inventing it all because I didn't trust her. "You're just insecure," she spat. "Rick's just sex, no big deal. You're overreacting. I don't even love him, I swear. It's just fun, a little excitement. You're so boring." Her words hit me like a slap. That's what she thought this was. A game, some stupid thrill she was chasing while I was left clueless. I was furious, but I kept my cool. It's not just sex, Lisa. You've been helping him smuggle art, manipulate customs, and hide illegal shipments. You're involved in something way bigger than you admit. How could you do this to me? To us? Her eyes flickered with something darker, anger maybe, or guilt, I couldn't tell. But she didn't deny it outright. Instead, she just kept lying, throwing out more insults, trying to dismiss everything I'd shown her. She told me I was crazy for even thinking she'd do something so stupid and desperate. You've always been paranoid, she sneered. You're just jealous because I still look good and I still get plenty of sex. Rick's just a guy I talk to sometimes. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I felt my blood boil. How could she be so dismissive, so selfish? It was like my entire reality was crumbling around me, piece by piece. That confrontation was the worst moment of my life. She sat there, smirking, trying to act like she was the victim. I wanted to shake her, scream at her, make her see how much she'd betrayed everything we had. But instead, I stayed silent for a moment, just staring at her. I realized that this wasn't just about her cheating or her lies. It was about who she was. A manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for her own gain. I left that day feeling hollow, yet somehow even more determined. I knew I couldn't just walk away without action. I'd already started planning my revenge, not just to punish her, but to expose her for what she truly was. I had to make sure she paid for everything, everything she'd stolen, everything she'd destroyed. And I wasn't going to stop until she faced the consequences. In that moment, I made a choice. I'd fight for my life, my reputation, and my sanity. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this, not anymore. It was time to turn the tables, to make her realize that her lies and betrayal had consequences, and I was the one who would make sure she paid. After that confrontation, I knew I needed to get serious. Lisa was a liar, a manipulator, and she thrived on chaos. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd come clean. I had to set a trap, and I had to do it carefully. I started working with my lawyer, telling him everything I knew, and asked for advice on how to handle her next moves. I also reached out to my customs contact, the one who had been investigating the smuggling routes, to see what they knew and how deep this went. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her involvement was. Lisa wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively facilitating this illegal operation. She'd been helping Rick manipulate documents, forge customs paperwork, and hide shipments. It was a massive operation, and if I exposed her directly, she'd probably go underground or destroy everything. I had to be smart. I decided I'd gather enough concrete evidence to take to authorities, to make sure this all got exposed properly. One night, I installed a more sophisticated hidden camera in the office, aimed at her desk where she kept her phone and papers. I wanted to catch her in the act, to see exactly how she handled her side deals. Sure enough, a few days later, I watched the footage, her sneaking her phone out in the middle of the night, meeting Rick in a parking lot, exchanging packages. The evidence was undeniable. I felt a mix of satisfaction and nausea, like I was finally seeing the truth of who she really was. I also found out she'd been lying about her sex life too. She told me she was only sleeping with Rick for fun. But the truth was, she was using their affair to keep him close, to keep him motivated in their illegal dealings. She'd even had the nerve to lie to her friends, telling everyone I was the insecure one. That's when it hit me. I'd been played for a fool. For years, I kept making excuses for her, thinking she was just fiery and bitchy but loyal. Turns out, she was just a master manipulator and I was her mark. I started planning my next move carefully. I wanted to catch her in a trap where she couldn't deny anything. So I staged a situation where I pretended to be out of town, took a little trip away for a weekend, and left her alone at the house. During that time, I set up a wiretap on her phone, just enough to record her conversations, and I left a couple of decoy documents I knew she'd be tempted to forge or use. I knew from my research that she'd try to cover her tracks, and I wanted her to slip up. Of course, she did. I got the recordings and they were damning, talking about her plans. With Rick discussing how to get more shipments through customs, how to manipulate the authorities, and bragging about how she'd fooled everyone, including me. She was so confident, so sure she'd never get caught. That's what made it so satisfying in a way. She was overconfident, thinking she was untouchable, but I had her cornered now. When I came back, I confronted her with everything. I played her the recordings and showed her the evidence. Her face went pale for a second, then she started yelling again, denying everything, calling me nuts, claiming I was stalking her. She tried to gaslight me, saying I'd lost my mind, that I was just jealous and paranoid. But I didn't back down. I told her this was over, that I knew what she'd been doing and I was going to turn her in. Her reaction was priceless. She looked genuinely scared for the first time in years. That moment was a turning point. I realized that I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife anymore. I was dealing with a criminal, someone who jeopardized everything I built. I had to act fast. I contacted the authorities, handed over all the evidence, and prepared myself for what would come next. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread, knowing that once I exposed her, my life would never be the same. But it was better than living in this lie, this betrayal. I was finally taking back control, and that felt like the only thing I could do. The day I handed everything over to the authorities, I felt like I was finally opening a door I couldn't close again. They took my evidence seriously, more seriously than I expected. I could see the gears turning behind their eyes, and I knew they were going to investigate her involvement thoroughly. I didn't stick around for the interrogation. I just left, knowing I'd done what I could. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I was finally free of the lie, and dread because I knew her reaction would be vicious, angry, and probably destructive. Lisa found out almost immediately. I could see it in her eyes when she came home that evening. There was a flicker of genuine panic. She started yelling at me, accusing me of betrayal, of hacking her phone, of spying on her. She spun her usual lies, claiming I'd gone crazy, that I was jealous, that I had no proof, that I was just trying to ruin her. But I didn't listen to her anymore. I'd heard enough. I stared at her, cold and calm, and told her I knew everything about the affair, the smuggling, the manipulation, everything she'd done. Her bitchy attitude flipped into full-blown rage. She started crying, then shouting, then screaming at the top of her lungs. She called me every horrible name in the book: controlling, paranoid, insecure, jealous. She told me I was ruining everything and that I was just a stupid businessman who couldn't handle a real woman. The thing is, I'd always known she was a bitch, but that night, her true colors shone brighter than ever. She was dangerous, manipulative, and selfish to the core. I stayed silent through her tirade. Inside, I was a mess: anger, betrayal, sadness, and a little bit of relief. I'd finally uncovered most of her lies, and I was ready to do whatever it took to end this nightmare. I told her I was done, that I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done, not just to me but to our entire life. I didn't want her to think she could walk all over me anymore. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions. The next few days were chaos. She tried every trick in the book to manipulate me, to make me doubt the evidence, to turn the blame around on me. But I had my proof, and I was prepared to see this through. I contacted a divorce lawyer, started gathering everything I needed to legally separate. I also made plans to sell the house. I needed to cut ties with her completely. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about protecting myself from any more damage she might try to do. Meanwhile, the authorities began their investigation. I didn't get to see the full results, but I was told there was enough evidence to charge her, and possibly Rick, with serious crimes. I felt a strange sense of vindication. She'd betrayed me, yes, but she'd also nearly destroyed my reputation, my business, my life. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I knew I'd lose a lot: money, comfort, the life I'd built. But I also knew I'd regain my peace. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this. Trust is fragile, and people can hide their true nature behind a mask for so long. I kept making excuses for her, always thinking she was just bitchy or stressed, but deep down I knew she had darker motives. This experience has taught me to be more cautious, more aware. I don't regret exposing her, even if it cost me everything. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to see the truth. I've come to accept that I'll never get the old version of us back, but I also know that I'll survive, and maybe even be better off without her. Now I'm just focusing on rebuilding my life. The business is still standing, and I've started seeing a counselor to handle the aftermath. It's not easy. I still feel the sting of betrayal every day, but I'm moving forward. I don't trust her anymore, and I don't want to. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through a similar betrayal, trust your gut, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to put an end to it. Sometimes, the truth is the only way to free yourself. Now that everything's in motion and the dust has started to settle, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what I went through. Honestly, I don't recognize myself from before. This whole ordeal changed me, made me sharper, more cautious, but also more aware of how easy it is for people to hide their true selves behind lies. Lisa's betrayal wasn't just about infidelity. It was about deception, greed, and a complete disregard for the life we built together. I guess I had to see it to believe it, and in the end, I'm glad I did. Getting rid of her was the hardest decision I ever made, but it was also the right one. She's out of my life now, facing whatever consequences come her way. Meanwhile, I'm rebuilding, learning how to trust myself again and making sure my business stays on the right side of everything. I've had to cut out a lot of people, some who enabled her, some who were blindsided, and some who just didn't understand. That's the cost of knowing the truth. It's lonely sometimes, but I've realized that honesty, even when brutal, is the only way to move forward. There are days when I think about her, wonder if she's truly suffering now or if she's already found someone else. Manipulate. But mostly I feel relief. The kind of relief that comes from finally being free from someone who was secretly destroying me. It's a new chapter, one I never thought I'd have to write, but I'm glad I did. I've learned that when someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. Don't dismiss the signs, don't make excuses, because in the end, the truth is what sets you free. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. Gather evidence if you need to, and don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes the hardest thing is to admit you've been betrayed, but it's also the most freeing. You deserve honesty and respect. If you don't get it, don't stay stuck trying to fix what's broken. Cut your losses and move on. Life's too short to live in lies. I've learned that the hard way, but I also learned that the truth, however painful, is the only way to heal and rebuild. As for me, I'm finally at peace. The scars will always be there, but they remind me of what I survived and what I refuse to accept anymore. I've lost her, yes, but I've gained clarity and a second chance at happiness. That's what matters now. I'll keep building my life, stronger and wiser from everything I've been through. And I'll never forget, betrayal is a harsh teacher, but it also opens your eyes to what's truly important.